When I got fired, he said, "You're not useful anymore." I found out he was already seeing someone else, our child's kindergarten teacher. Instead of crying, I recorded their conversations through our baby monitor. 1 month later, during parent-teacher night, I played the audio over the PA system. The whole school went silent. He ran out, but the teacher froze when I revealed the second recording because
I'm Alyssa.
37. I live in Henderson, Nevada. I thought I had a regular life, nothing fancy but solid. I worked in HR at a logistics company, steady paycheck, benefits, the usual. My husband, Chris, worked in insurance. We had a 5-year-old son, Mason. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were okay. That changed real fast. I got laid off on a Thursday. No warning. Just called into a meeting and handed a folder. Position eliminated, they said. I packed my stuff, walked to my car in silence, and sat there for 20 minutes just staring at the wheel. I was scared. I didn't want to tell Chris. I didn't want him to think I was a failure. But when I got home, I had to tell him. I didn't even make it past I lost my job before he said, "So what now? You just gonna sit around?" I laughed. Like an idiot. I thought he was joking. But he kept going. "Guess you're not that useful anymore." Those exact words. Word for word. He poured himself a glass of scotch, turned on the TV, and left me there, crying into my hands. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, he left early.
No will be.
"No, you'll be okay." Just walked out like I was invisible. Over the next week, I noticed him getting colder. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't even look at me unless he needed something. He came home later. He started keeping his phone face down. One night, I asked about Mason's school. His teacher, Dana Carlson, had called me a few weeks earlier about some behavior stuff, nothing big. I asked if he'd spoken to her. He said, "Yeah, I've been talking to Dana a lot." He said it's so casual. Too casual. I asked, "Since when are you and Miss Carlson chatting outside of school?" He didn't answer. Just shrugged and said, "She gets it. Unlike some people." I felt sick. Dana had been acting weird too. She used to be warm with me, smiled a lot. Now she barely said hello at drop-off. One time, I caught her looking at Chris in a way that made my skin crawl. I knew something was going on. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I got smart. We still had Mason's old baby monitor. It had two-way audio and a small camera. I tested it. Worked just fine. So one day while Chris was at work, I cleaned the living room like I was nesting. I moved some furniture around and hid the baby monitor under the console table against the wall, facing the couch. It picked up everything. I connected the feed to my old tablet, kept it in the kitchen drawer. For the next 3 weeks, I acted like I was job hunting. I left job boards open on my laptop, walked around with a notebook, made fake calls. But what I was really doing was listening, watching. The first recording I caught was just him on the phone. Yeah, she's still moping around. Totally useless now. I can't even talk to her without rolling my eyes. "You're the one who makes me feel like I matter, Dana." There it was.
Plain.
I recorded everything. I copied the audio. I saved the files. Labeled them by date and time. Then it got darker. One night, he was talking to Dana on video chat. She said something that made my stomach twist. "I don't want to sneak around anymore. I don't like being some secret. You said you'd talk to her by now." Chris looked annoyed. I said I would. She's fragile. I can't just drop it on her. Dana leaned in close to her camera and said, "You're lucky I haven't said anything about what happened in the classroom."
Silence.
Chris said, "Come on, that was nothing. That didn't mean anything." Dana raised her voice. "It would mean something to the school board. You think they'd let me keep teaching if they knew? You think you'd get custody if that came out?" That moment told me there was more. Something had happened between them on school property. Something bad. I kept gathering clips. I saved every piece. Then parent-teacher night got announced. Big event. All parents, all teachers, full attendance. I had an idea. The school office had a PA system. Old system, nothing fancy. a mic, a speaker setup that broadcast through the whole school. I called the principal, told her I wanted to give a short thank you speech to the parents and teachers. She loved the idea. I downloaded the audio files onto a flash drive, put them in order. First the flirting,
Then the insults about me.
then the threat. The night of the meeting, I dressed nice, cleaned up, wore my engagement ring for the last time. The room was full, parents everywhere. Dana was at the front of the classroom, fixing papers. Chris walked in late, spotted me and froze. I smiled at him.
Principal nodded to me.
You ready to give your speech? I stepped up to the mic, looked around. Then I said, before I speak, I want to share something special. Something recorded in our home, by accident, that I think you'll all find enlightening. I hit play. Chris's voice came out loud and clear.
She's useless now.
Just sits around like a lump. You're the one I think about at night, Dana. You could hear a pin drop. Dana's face went white. The principal looked like she'd been punched. Chris stood up. His face turned bright red. He muttered something and rushed out the side door. I let it sit for a second. Then I hit play again. Dana's voice now. You're lucky I haven't said anything about what happened in the classroom. You think they'd let me keep teaching if they knew? The room shifted. You could feel it. Whispers started. A couple parents stood up. One mom turned to the principal and said, "Are you going to do something about this?" Dana looked at me, shaking. I just stared back. That was the beginning. After that night, everything snowballed. The next morning, I got a call from the school district office. A woman named Margaret asked me to come in and speak with their internal investigator. I agreed. When I showed up, I had a folder with transcripts of the recordings, a flash drive with all the audio files, and my tablet with the original videos from the baby monitor. They didn't expect that. I sat across from two officials, one from HR, one from legal, and played the recording where Dana clearly said, "If that gets out, I'll lose my job. You'll lose your kid." They looked stunned. The HR rep leaned forward and said, "Do you know what she was referring to?" I said, "No. But you're the school. You can find out." They promised an immediate investigation. I left the folder with them and went straight to my lawyer. The divorce papers had already been drawn up. I told him we needed to file that day, and we needed to file for sole custody. I wasn't playing nice anymore. Chris tried to come home that night. He had the nerve to knock like it was nothing. I answered the door. He looked tired, sweaty, and pathetic. He said, "You humiliated me in front of everyone. Why would you do that?" I said, "Because you called me useless. Because you had an affair with our kids' teacher. Because I know there's something worse you're not saying." His eyes widened. That's when I knew there was something worse. I shut the door in his face. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Dana. Her voice was shaking. "Alyssa, please. Please don't send anything else. I never meant for any of this to happen. He told me you two were separated. I didn't know he was lying. I want to keep my job. Please, let me explain." She didn't know I had more. So much more. I hadn't even used the video recordings yet. One night, a few weeks earlier, they had come to the house while I was supposed to be at a job interview. I was actually at a coffee shop 10 minutes away, watching the live baby monitor feed from my tablet. They sat on my couch. My couch. He kissed her. She laughed, said, "Imagine if Mason walked in right now." Chris said, "He wouldn't. She never takes him anywhere anymore. She's useless." He said it again. That same word. They didn't just talk. They did things I'll never forget. On my furniture. In my house. With my son's backpack hanging on the coat rack behind them. I copied the whole thing. I didn't play that video at parent-teacher night. But I kept it. The school placed Dana on unpaid leave. She tried to resign quietly. I made sure that didn't happen. I emailed the school board, the principal, and the PTA heads. I told them there was more. I didn't send it yet. But I told them what I had. One of the PTA moms, her name's Krista, called me and said, "I always knew she was fake. If you need support, I'll testify. Let me know what you need." Suddenly, I wasn't alone. Meanwhile, Chris was unraveling. I started hearing from mutual friends that he was staying with a buddy and trying to figure stuff out. I didn't care. I had already spoken with a custody evaluator. My lawyer was building the case with everything I'd given her. Every file, every call, every insult, every threat, all documented. But the twist came 1 week later. A letter arrived at my door. It was from another parent, a dad whose daughter was in Mason's class. Inside was a handwritten note. It said, "You need to know. This isn't Dana's first incident. My daughter came home crying one day. She said Miss Carlson's friend yelled at her, called her a brat, told her to shut up. We reported it. Nothing happened. They swept it under the rug. We pulled her out a month later." The note wasn't signed. No return address. I asked Mason that night, "Do you remember ever seeing Miss Carlson with Daddy at school?" He nodded. "One time. She locked the door when he came in. I had to wait outside." My blood ran cold. That was it. That was the thing they were hiding. It wasn't just an affair. He had been sneaking into her classroom while school was in session, locking the door, leaving my son in the hallway like an afterthought. This wasn't just betrayal. This was dangerous, reckless. I added it all to the case file. At this point, Chris was texting me almost daily. Long messages, rambling, apologies mixed with blame. 1 minute he was sorry. The next he was accusing me of ruining his life. Then he said something that lit a new fire in me. "If you take this any further, I'll fight for custody. I'll prove you're unstable." That was the moment I decided to release the second video. Not just the audio. The video. The one where they kissed in my living room. Where she sat on his lap. Where he talked about Mason like he was an inconvenience. The one with my son's toy dinosaur sitting on the couch right beside them. I sent a copy to the district attorney. I CC'd the school board. I sent one to the Department of Child and Family Services. I didn't send it to Chris. Not yet. But I had something else planned for him. Something personal. 2 days after I sent the videos to the district and the DA, things moved fast. Faster than I expected. I got a call from a detective with the Henderson Police Department. She said they were opening a preliminary investigation. Not just into Dana, but into Chris. They had questions about his presence at the school during work hours. Whether he had permission. Whether any school rules were broken. Whether children were ever left unsupervised. They asked me if Mason ever said anything else. I told them everything. Especially about the time Dana locked the door with Mason waiting outside. It wasn't just unethical, it was dangerous. A few days later, I got a call from Mason's new teacher. Dana had been officially fired, and Chris was banned from school grounds. The principal, who once looked at me like a nuisance, now called to apologize. I didn't accept. I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing this for Mason. For me. But this is where the next twist came in. Remember the anonymous letter? I decided to find out who wrote it. I asked around the parent group chats. Didn't ask directly, just mentioned some parents had concerns about Dana long before this came out. That's when Krista, the PTA mom, said something that caught my attention. "Oh, totally. Remember Sam? The guy whose wife left last year? His daughter used to be in Dana's class. He hated Dana. Asked for more. Turns out Sam had been raising concerns about Dana for months. He said Dana acted too familiar with certain dads. That she made personal comments during conferences. That she would lean too close, touch her arm when she talked. Nobody took him seriously. They said he was just a bitter divorce. I found Sam on Facebook. Messaged him. He replied within the hour. We talked on the phone for 2 hours that night. He told me Dana had once invited him to grab coffee and talk about his daughter's behavior. When he said no, she started ignoring his daughter in class, marking her absent when she wasn't, sending passive-aggressive notes home. He filed a complaint. Nothing happened. When I asked if he wrote the anonymous letter, he didn't answer. Just said, "I'm glad someone finally took her down." He told me one last thing before we hung up. Watch your back. Chris isn't done. Guys like him never are. He was right. The very next week, Chris filed a motion for emergency visitation. He claimed I was vindictive, unstable, and poisoning Mason against him. I sat there in the courtroom with my lawyer, hands sweating, while his attorney, a smarmy guy named Lucas Reed, read out loud how I leaked private recordings and humiliated a teacher in public. But then my lawyer stood up and played our recording. The one where Dana threatened to expose something that could cost Chris custody. Then we showed the footage. The judge watched every second. Didn't blink. At one point, he paused the video, looked straight at Chris, and said, "You brought your affair partner into the home where your child lives. That alone is poor judgment.
But what you did on school grounds,
that's dangerous." Emergency visitation was denied. Full custody granted to me, pending a full psychological evaluation of Chris. He looked like he wanted to disappear. But he wasn't gone yet. 2 days later, someone tried to break into my car. Nothing was stolen, but the lock was jimmied and the glove box was torn open. I called the cops. They dusted for prints, said it could have been a random hit. But then I got a text from an unknown number. "Don't get too comfortable. You ruined 2 lives. Don't act surprised when karma comes for you too." I took it straight to the police. They traced the number back to a burner phone. Bought in cash. No ID. I didn't tell Mason what was going on. I just moved his bed into my room for the week. I slept with the baby monitor on again, but this time it was pointed at my front door. And then one night, I saw something. It was 2:13 a.m. I heard a thump on the porch. I opened the tablet, watched as someone walked up, slowly, with a hood over their head. They leaned down, left something on the mat, then walked off. I waited 5 minutes before opening the door. It was a manila envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. Printed. "You think you're the hero. But ask yourself, what kind of mother sets her kid up to lose his father?" No name. No return address. But at the bottom, handwritten, was this: "He's already talking to another lawyer." So now I knew. Chris wasn't done. He was just getting desperate. I was tired. I was angry. But more than anything, I was done being scared. Chris had crossed every line, and I had taken blow after blow.
but now?
Now I had all the power. I just needed to use it the right way. I met with my lawyer again. I told her about the break-in attempt, the envelope, the threats. She asked if I wanted to press harassment charges.
I said no, not yet.
"I want to end this," I told her. "But I want to end it my way." So we made a plan. The first step? Dig deeper into Chris's finances. You see, during our marriage, I let him handle all the bills. I had a job, but he managed the bank accounts. After I got fired, he took full control. I didn't push back.
Until now.
My lawyer subpoenaed his financial records. We wanted to show the court that he wasn't just unfaithful, he was reckless with our son's future. When the reports came in, I almost laughed. Chris was broke. In the last 6 months, he'd drained nearly $14,000 on hotels, expensive dinners, and God knows what else. But the best part? Several of the charges were listed under a business credit card he wasn't authorized to use for personal spending. We passed it along to his company. A week later, I got a call from a friend who still worked there. Chris had been fired. On the spot. No evidence. Apparently, this was his last strike. He had already been warned for some shady stuff last year. Using the company card to wine and dine his mistress just sealed it. He didn't know I knew yet. I waited. 3 days later, he showed up on my lawn. Unshaven, sweating, pacing like a trapped rat. I watched him from the living room. He didn't see me at first. Then he screamed, "Come out here." I opened the front door, but stayed behind the screen. "What do you want?" I asked. "You happy now?" he shouted. "I lost everything. You ruined my life." "No," I said calmly. "You did that all by yourself." He looked like he wanted to break something. "You think this is over?" he snapped. "I still have rights. I'm still Mason's father." "You were," I said, "until you locked him out of a classroom so you could screw his teacher behind a closed door. Until you called him an obstacle." He went silent. I opened the screen door and stepped out. Here's what's gonna happen, I said. You're going to sign over full custody. No shared rights.
No 비슷하신.
Nothing. He laughed. Like hell I will. I smiled. Then I guess the police will be interested in the full video footage. Not just what I shared with the school. You know, the one where you said you hated being a father? His face dropped.
You wouldn't, he said.
Oh, I would. And I'll post it too. You know how quick things spread online? Especially when you see a grown man screwing a schoolteacher while a 5-year-old's backpack is in the shot. He turned pale. But you have a choice, I continued. Walk away quietly. Or get destroyed publicly. He left without a word. 2 days later, the signed custody agreement was on my lawyer's desk.
No 비슷하신.
No contact. Just child support and a gag order, so he couldn't spin some sob story later. But that wasn't the final twist. See, Dana? She wasn't just fired. After the police finished their investigation, it came out that she had 2 other incidents with parents swept under the rug. Flirting, inappropriate behavior, misuse of her school email for personal relationships. The district didn't just let her go. They filed a formal misconduct report with the state board. Her teaching license was revoked.
Permanently.
She tried to fight it, even threatened a lawsuit. But once the board reviewed the recordings, especially the one where she warned Chris about losing his kid, they dropped the hammer. Last I heard, she moved to Arizona and started working at some cheap tutoring center. She tried to call me once. I let it go to voicemail. Please don't ruin me, she said. I was stupid, but I don't deserve this. I deleted it. As for Chris, he moved back in with his mother. He lost his job, lost his reputation, and lost the only people who still believed in him. He never got to see Mason again. And here's the part that still makes me smile. 6 months after everything went down, I got a new job. Better pay. Closer to home. It's not glamorous, but it gives me time with Mason. Time to heal. We're doing okay. He still asks about his dad sometimes, and I don't lie. I just say, he made some bad choices. But you're safe now. Because he is. Chris told me I was useless. He had no idea how dangerous it is to underestimate someone who's been quiet too long.
He taught me that.
And I made sure he'd never forget it.